Jake gets the director position. No offense, but he's just better suited. The words came out of her mouth like she was ordering coffee. Casual, easy. 23 people in that room. I'd trained 19 of them myself, held their hands through their first presentations, fixed their errors at 2 in the morning when deadlines loomed impossible, answered their panicked calls on weekends when they couldn't figure out systems I'd built from scratch. Jake had been here 64 days. 64. His girlfriend, the woman saying these words with such careless certainty, had known him for 9 weeks. 9 weeks versus 8 years. 96 months of showing up early, leaving late, carrying projects nobody wanted, fixing problems nobody else could solve. 96 months of being the person everyone called when things broke. 8 years of building something from nothing, of turning a failing department into one that generated $42 million in annual revenue. And she gave it to her boyfriend of 9 weeks. She reached over and squeezed his hand. He shifted in his seat. Uncomfortable. Wouldn't meet my eyes. He should have been uncomfortable. 2 months ago, he couldn't find the supply closet. Last week, he'd asked me which building our main client operated from. The client we'd worked with for 6 consecutive years. The client whose account I'd personally saved twice. But he was dating the boss's granddaughter. And apparently, that counted more than anything I'd done. I stood, smiled, said the words that were expected of me. Congratulations. I'm sure you'll do great things. My voice didn't shake. My hands didn't tremble. I'd learned a long time ago how to disappear my feelings, how to be professional when everything inside me was screaming. Then I walked out. Nobody followed me. Nobody said a word. But here's what nobody in that room knew. Here's the part that changes everything. What I did next, it wasn't planned as revenge. It was survival. It was 8 years of being invisible, finally becoming visible in a way nobody, and I mean nobody, saw coming. Before I go any further, though, I want to say thank you. Thank you for being here, for listening to this, for giving me your time. If this story hits you the way it hit me, living through every moment of it, do me a favor. Hit that like button, drop a comment, and tell me if you've ever felt invisible at your job, if you've ever watched someone less qualified get what you earned. And subscribe, because stories like this, real stories about real people fighting back in unexpected ways, they need to be heard. Now, let's continue. My name is Lennox, 34 years old when this happened. People always said I had a forgettable face. Not ugly, not beautiful, just ordinary, in every measurable way. The kind of person who blends into backgrounds. Brown hair, average height, features that don't stand out in any particular direction. I'd learned to use that. While everyone else fought for attention, performed for recognition, I built things quietly. Real things. Systems. Processes. Relationships that actually mattered. 8 years earlier, I'd walked into that company for an entry-level interview. 26 years old, hungry for something I couldn't name, tired of being invisible but not knowing how to change it. The interview went fine. Standard questions about my experience, my goals, my strengths. I gave standard answers. The hiring manager seemed pleased but non-committal. Said they'd call. Then an old man walked into the room. He was 71 then, though he moved like someone younger. Founder of the company. Built it from absolute nothing 40 years prior with money borrowed from family and a vision nobody else could see. Then he'd step back when his son was ready, let the next generation run daily operations. But he still came around, still watched, still cared deeply about what he'd created. He sat down in the empty seat, looked at me for a long moment that felt like assessment, and asked 3 questions. What do you do when nobody's watching? Who did you lose that you can't forget? What are you building that nobody sees yet? Nobody had ever asked me questions like that. Not in interviews, not anywhere. They hit something deep, something true. I answered honestly, told him about my mother, how she died when I was 19, sudden car accident on a Tuesday afternoon, how I promised her at the hospital before she went that I'd matter somehow. Told him I worked late when everyone left because that's when the real work happened, when you could actually think, actually build, without constant interruption. Told him I was building a version of myself that wouldn't disappear when people stopped looking. He hired me on the spot. You remind me of someone, he said, voice quiet, eyes somewhere else. Someone I lost. I didn't ask who. Felt too personal, too raw. But over the next 8 years, I figured it out in pieces. His name was Hollis, and his story became tangled with mine in ways neither of us expected. I started entry level, bottom of the structure, but I moved fast. Not because I played politics or networked aggressively. I just solved problems. When systems broke, I fixed them. When processes failed, I rebuilt them. When clients threatened to leave, I gave them reasons to stay. Hollis would stop by sometimes. Every few months, we'd talk for 5 minutes, sometimes less, about business philosophy, about life choices, about the weight of building something meaningful. These conversations felt important in ways I couldn't articulate. Most people work for paychecks, he told me once, early on. A few work for legacy, your legacy. I didn't know what to say to that, so I just kept working. His wife died when I'd been there 6 years. Cancer, the slow kind that takes everything piece by piece. I went to the funeral service along with 200 other employees, paid respects, signed the memory book, but I also sent flowers to his house afterward. Not company flowers with the corporate logo, personal ones, white lilies. Wrote a note about how loss reshapes us into people we don't recognize, how memory becomes the only place we can hold the people we've lost, how grief is just love with nowhere to go. He called me that night, 10:30. I almost didn't answer. We talked for 2 hours, about his wife, about my mother, about how work becomes this hiding place when home holds too much pain. He told me about 47 years of marriage, about watching someone you love disappear slowly, about feeling guilty for being relieved when it finally ended because, at least, she wasn't suffering anymore. I told him about being 19 and suddenly alone, about how I still set 2 places at dinner sometimes before remembering. After that call, things shifted. He started coming by more often. We'd have coffee in the building cafe, lunch at quiet restaurants away from the office where nobody knew us. Nothing inappropriate, nothing that crossed professional lines. Just 2 people who understood what it meant to lose someone and keep walking forward anyway. My son doesn't understand, he told me repeatedly. His son, Lawrence, ran the company now, had for 15 years. He thinks companies are about money, profit margins, growth percentages. But money without meaning is just math. It doesn't sustain you. It doesn't matter. Lawrence ran everything by numbers. He was good at it. The company made money. Stock prices rose. Investors were happy. But there was no soul in it anymore. No purpose beyond quarterly earnings. 3 years ago, Lawrence's daughter joined the company. Her name was Piper, 25 years old, fresh from a prestigious graduate school, with perfect grades and 0 real-world experience. Smart in that academic way that doesn't translate to actual application. Book knowledge without wisdom. She made mistakes, big ones, sent confidential information to wrong clients, made promises in meetings we couldn't keep, alienated a major account with careless comments about their industry. I fixed them quietly, stayed late, made calls, smoothed relationships, never mentioned it to anyone, never kept receipts or built resentment. That's what you do when you care about something larger than yourself. You protect it. Hollis noticed. He noticed everything. You're protecting her, he said one afternoon over coffee. She's learning, I replied. Everyone makes mistakes early on. Lawrence gives her everything. Authority without experience. Position without preparation. But you give her room to grow. That's rarer. That's valuable. I shrugged. Didn't know what to say. She doesn't appreciate it, he continued. Probably doesn't even know you're doing it. That's okay. I'm not doing it for appreciation. He looked at me for a long moment. You're a better person than most people deserve. 6 months ago, things between Hollis and me changed fundamentally. We were walking through this park near his house. Spring evening, birds making noise in trees. Temperature perfect. He stopped suddenly, took my hand, held it like he was holding something fragile and precious. I'm 84 years old, he said. His voice was steady, but his hand trembled slightly. I don't have time to pretend anymore. You make me feel alive in ways I forgot existed. I should have stopped it there. Should have said something about professionalism, about age difference, about his family, and what they'd think. But I didn't. Because he was right. Something alive existed between us. Something genuine and rare. We kept it private. Had to. Lawrence would have combusted with rage. Piper would have seen it as betrayal, as manipulation. So we met in quiet places nobody else frequented. built something real in the spaces between everyone else's expectations and judgments. 3 weeks before the promotion announcement that destroyed everything, Hollis proposed. We were at his house. Late evening, rain outside, making soft sounds against windows. He pulled out this ring. Nothing extravagant or showy, just beautiful in its simplicity. Single stone, white gold. "Marry me," he said. Not asking, really. Stating, "Not because I'm old and lonely. Not because I want someone to take care of me in my final years. Because you're brilliant and kind and you see the world the way I do. Because I want to spend whatever time I have left watching you build things." I told him I needed time. Not because I didn't care about him. I did, deeply. But mixing love and work felt dangerous. Like juggling knives. One wrong move and everything bleeds. He understood. Said he'd wait. Said he'd wait forever. If that's what I needed. Then came the boardroom meeting. That moment when Piper stood in front of 23 people and gave my job, my position, my everything to Jake, her boyfriend of 9 weeks, the guy who still got lost in our building, the guy who'd asked me last week how to access basic reports. I walked out of that meeting and sat in my vehicle for 40 minutes. Engine off, just breathing, processing, watching rain start falling, my phone on the passenger seat buzzing with messages I didn't read. Then it buzzed with a call. "Hollis," I answered. "I heard what happened," he said, voice tight with anger. "Your granddaughter just gave my job to her boyfriend." Silence, long silence. Then, low and serious and furious. "The director position? The one you built from absolutely nothing?" "Yes." More silence. I could hear him breathing, thinking, calculating. Then, "What are you going to do?" That's when everything clicked into place. When 8 years of being overlooked crystallized into perfect clarity. "Remember your proposal?" "Of course. Every word. I'd like to accept. This weekend, if possible. Small ceremony. Just us and whoever needs to be there legally." He laughed. Surprised. Delighted. Maybe a little shocked. "You're serious right now?" "Completely. Are you?" I've never been more serious about anything in my entire life. We married that Saturday. Judge's private chambers. 10 in the morning. 2 court clerks as required witnesses. Hollis wore navy. I wore a simple dress I'd bought Friday afternoon. We exchanged vows that mattered. Promised things we meant. When the judge pronounced us married, I felt something fundamental shift. Not just in my life, in the entire structure of everything. I wasn't just an employee anymore. I was family. Legally, irrevocably, family. We filed the marriage certificate Monday morning first thing. Public record. Anyone could look it up if they knew to look. But nobody was looking. Tuesday, I came to work like always. Same time, same routine. Kept my wedding band in my bag. Didn't announce anything. Didn't change anything visible. Just did my job. Watched Jake struggle with basic director tasks. "These quarterly projections don't make any sense," he said, panicked. "Papers scattered everywhere. The formulas are completely broken." "They're not broken. You're using them wrong. Can you just fix them real quick?" "That's not my job anymore. You're the director now. Remember? Better suited and everything." His face went pale. He looked young suddenly. Lost. Piper kept bringing him lunch, kissing him in hallways, acting like she'd won some competition I didn't know we were having. She had absolutely no idea what was coming. Wednesday afternoon, 2:15. Lawrence called an emergency board meeting. Mandatory attendance for all senior staff. Unusual. Concerning. People whispered about layoffs, about mergers, about problems with major clients. I walked in, sat where I always sat, next to the window overlooking the parking structure. Lawrence stood at the front. He looked strange, shaken, like someone had knocked his entire world sideways. "We have a situation," he said, voice tight. "My father got married over the weekend." People reacted predictably. "Congratulations," clapping. Someone asked about the lucky bride. Another asked if there had been a ceremony. Why nobody was invited. "He married an employee," Lawrence said. The words came out like broken glass. "Someone from this company." The room transformed. Congratulations died mid-breath. Piper leaned forward, eyes sharp. "Who?" Her father looked directly at me, held my eyes. Her. Every single head turned. 23 people staring. I pulled my wedding band from my bag and slipped it onto my finger. Slowly, deliberately. Piper stood so fast her seat rolled backward and hit the wall. You what? That's impossible. You can't. Just how dare you? I can, I said quietly, calmly. And I did. Your grandfather asked me to marry him 3 weeks ago. I accepted last Wednesday. We married Saturday morning. It's filed with the county clerk. Completely legal. Completely real. You can look it up. Jake looked confused, overwhelmed. I don't understand. What does this actually change? I looked at him, really looked at him. Young, unqualified, given everything because someone found him attractive. It changes everything. I'm not just an employee who got passed over anymore. I'm legally family now. That means access to family trusts, inheritance considerations, decision-making power in this company's future. That didn't exist 5 days ago when you got my job. She didn't just give my promotion away. She gave her grandfather's wife's promotion away. Piper's face drained completely of color. You manipulated him. You seduced an old man for his money and his... For what exactly? I interrupted. Voice still quiet, still calm. Money? I built a department that generates $42 million in annual value. I could have left any time, gone anywhere, worked for competitors who actually appreciated what I do. I married him because he's the only person in this entire building who ever saw what I actually contribute, who valued me for what I built, not for how I looked or who I knew. That's when Hollis walked in. Nobody had seen him at the office in months. Years, maybe. He moved slowly, but with absolute certainty, with authority that made everyone remember exactly who built this company from nothing. She's exactly right, he said. His voice carried weight that silenced every whisper. I asked her to marry me because she's brilliant, kind, hardworking, and sees the world the way I do. My son forgot that businesses are built by people, not positions on charts. My granddaughter forgot that loyalty matters infinitely more than convenience or attraction. This woman spent 8 years making everyone around her better, solving problems nobody else could solve, and you threw her away like garbage for someone who can't even read a basic projection report. He walked to me slowly, put his hand on my shoulder. I'm reinstating her as director, effective immediately. Jake returns to his previous role, and I'm resuming active involvement in company operations, with my wife's counsel and input, until I'm confident leadership understands what actually makes this organization valuable. The room stayed completely silent. Then someone started clapping, then another, then half the room. The people I'd trained, the people I'd helped at 2 in the morning, the people who'd watched me get overlooked for 8 straight years. Piper walked out without a word. Jake followed her, looking shell-shocked. Lawrence stayed seated, staring at his father, at me, recalculating his entire world and his place in it. That was 3 years ago. Here's what happened next. Here's where everything gets complicated, where choices carry weight, where winning costs something you didn't expect to pay. Jake quit 2 weeks later, couldn't handle it, the embarrassment, the whispers in hallways, everyone knowing he'd been promoted solely because someone found him attractive, not because he'd earned anything or contributed anything. He left town completely. Last I heard, through mutual connections, he was selling insurance in another state, different industry, different life. Piper requested an immediate transfer. Singapore office, as far from headquarters as geographically possible. She left within a month, sent me exactly 1 message before her flight. I underestimated you. I never responded. Didn't need to. The message said everything that mattered. Lawrence struggled the most profoundly. His father's new marriage meant family dynamics shifted permanently and irrevocably. I wasn't just his employee anymore. I was his stepmother, younger than him by 12 years. His father's wife, his children's step-grandmother. The complete absurdity of it created this tension that never fully resolved itself. Holiday dinners became careful negotiations. Who sat where? Who hosted? Whether I was welcome at family events or if my presence made everything too complicated. Whether we pretended to be a normal family or acknowledged the strangeness. I went to some events, skipped others, let Hollis navigate his family relationships, while I navigated my new reality as both employee and family member. Board meetings changed fundamentally too. I wasn't just director anymore. I was Hollis's wife. When I spoke, people listened with different ears. Some with genuine respect, some with deep resentment, some with careful calculation. trying to figure out exactly how much influence I had over the old man's decisions. I did have influence, but not the way they thought. Hollis and I built a real partnership. He'd ask my opinion on major company decisions. I'd tell him the absolute truth, even when it contradicted what Lawrence wanted, even when it made things harder. Sometimes Hollis sided with my perspective, sometimes with his son's. But the fact that I had a genuine voice, that my input actually mattered, it fundamentally changed the entire power structure. Lawrence hated it, not openly. He was far too professional for obvious resentment, but I'd catch him looking at me during meetings with this expression that communicated everything he couldn't say out loud. Piper came back after a year, couldn't stay away forever. This was her family's company, her inheritance, her future, but she returned different, quieter, more careful, more humble. She'd learned something crucial in Singapore about earning respect instead of expecting it, about competence mattering more than connections. We never became friends. That wasn't possible after everything. But we found a way to work together, polite, professional, respectful in a distant way. She stopped dating people from the office, stopped making decisions based purely on personal feelings, started actually learning the business from the ground up like she should have from the beginning. Hollis and I had 5 years together, 5 genuinely good years. We traveled to places he'd always wanted to see, but never had time for. We laughed constantly, built a life together that felt real and meaningful and true. He taught me about patience, about playing the long game, about building things that last beyond your own lifetime. He died 2 months after his 89th birthday. Heart attack in his sleep, quick, peaceful. He didn't suffer, just went to sleep one night beside me and didn't wake up the next morning. The funeral was massive, hundreds of people, employees past and present, clients, competitors who respected what he'd built, people whose lives he'd touched in ways they never forgot. Lawrence delivered the eulogy, talked about his father's legacy, his vision, his profound impact on everyone who knew him. Never mentioned me once. Piper spoke too, about her grandfather's kindness, his wisdom, how he'd fundamentally shaped who she'd become. Also didn't mention me. I sat in the front row because that's where widows sit, wore black, cried genuine tears, loved a man everyone assumed I'd used. After the service ended, after most people left, Piper approached me. First time we'd spoken directly in months. "Did you ever actually love him?" she asked. Voice quiet but sharp. "Every single day," I said. Met her eyes. "Did you ever actually notice who was making you look good all those years?" She didn't answer, just walked away. Hollis's will surprised everyone except me. He left Lawrence, the company leadership, as expected. Left Piper a significant trust fund, as expected. But he also left me enough company shares to maintain real influence. 20%, not controlling interest, but enough that major decisions required my approval. Enough that I couldn't be ignored or dismissed. Lawrence tried to contest it immediately. His lawyers reviewed everything thoroughly. They told him he'd lose. The marriage was completely legitimate. The will was ironclad. I was legally entitled to my inheritance. So here I am, 3 years later, still working at the company I helped build from a failing department into something profitable and meaningful. Still director, still doing the work that actually matters. But now when I walk into meetings, when I make recommendations, when I push for changes that prioritize people over pure profit, I do it with a voice that cannot be ignored or dismissed. Lawrence still runs daily operations. He's good at it, better than he was, actually. Having someone who can question his decisions, someone he can't fire or intimidate or dismiss, it forced him to think harder about his choices, to consider perspectives beyond pure numbers. Piper moved back to headquarters last year. She's senior vice president now. Earned it legitimately this time. We have lunch occasionally, talk about business, about her grandfather, about what it means to build something that outlasts you. She asked me once, over coffee, if I'd planned it. The marriage, the timing, the revenge. No, I told her honestly. I didn't plan any of it. I just refused to disappear. People still talk about me constantly. The woman who married the founder, the employee who became family. Some think I manipulated a vulnerable old man. Some think I'm brilliant. Some think I'm both simultaneously. I don't care anymore what they think. Because here's what I learned through all of this. Being invisible isn't the same as being powerless. Sometimes, the quietest people are building things nobody sees until it's far too late to stop them. Sometimes, the person everyone overlooks is precisely the one who changes everything. I didn't set out to marry my way into power. That wasn't the goal. I set out to be valued by someone who saw what I was actually worth. The power came afterward. The influence came afterward. The revenge, if you want to call it that, came from simply refusing to accept that 9 weeks could erase 8 years. Jake got the position because someone found him attractive. I built a lasting legacy because someone found me invaluable. Those aren't the same thing. They never were. They never will be. Piper learned that lesson. Lawrence learned that lesson. Everyone in that boardroom learned that lesson. And I learned that sometimes the best revenge isn't destroying someone. It's becoming so undeniable that they have to live forever with the weight of what they missed. It's making them watch while you build the life they tried to take from you. It's existing, thriving, succeeding in spaces they thought belonged exclusively to them. I still wear my wedding band, still think about Hollis every single day, still miss him. The grief is absolutely real. So was the love. You can genuinely love someone and benefit from loving them. Those things coexist. Life isn't that simple or that cruel. Would I do it again? Marry an 84-year-old man? Become part of a family that resented my existence? Fight for space in a company that tried to erase me? Yes, without any hesitation. Because I mattered to someone who mattered. Because I built something that lasted. Because when they tried to make me disappear, I became impossible to ignore. That's my story. That's what happened when the CEO's daughter gave my promotion to her boyfriend. That's what she didn't know about me. That's what changed absolutely everything. If you're still here, if you made it this far, thank you. Truly. Stories like this don't get told enough. People who refuse to disappear don't get celebrated enough. So, hit that like button if this resonated with you. Comment and tell me about a time you refused to be invisible. Subscribe because there are more stories like this, more people like me, more endings that nobody sees coming. And remember this, you're not invisible. You're building something. Even if nobody sees it yet, keep building. Your moment is coming. Mine just happened to come with a wedding ring and a board vote. But yours? Yours will be different. Better maybe. Uniquely yours. Just don't let them make you disappear. Don't let 9 weeks erase 8 years. Don't let someone who doesn't see your value convince you it doesn't exist. You matter. Your work matters. Your presence matters. Even when they forget to look. Especially when they forget to look. That's when you build the thing they'll never forget.